Welcome to episode 112 of the Omnigamers Club podcast, the podcast for games on all platforms, including banana phones. I am Daniel Winter.
Hey. USA, hello, hello.
Ring ring. How are you, Mark?
I'm well. It's still warm-ish at the end of. I feel like it's the tail end of summer here.
Yes. I missed the worst of it well, I guess we both did while we were away. It's one last hurrah of summer. I'll give it this 1 week, and if it gets more than that, I'm out, pissing out.
Yeah, I'm not gonna complain about the heat because I was like approaching like 38 and like 70% humidity in Tokyo, so this is much, much nicer.
Excellent. Well, lots to cover today, so why don't we get to it?
Let's do it. All right.
So, little bit of a return to form, just to review our format here, and that we have our three courses. In the appetizer, we'll be covering some news and smaller games we've been playing. In the main, we'll each have a larger game, or games maybe, to review. And in dessert, of course, we'll be talking about something non-game related that we've been enjoying lately.
Yeah, and speaking of the appetizer, I think we this is a rare opportunity for us to be timely. Is we talked about a couple of stories that were sort of breaking last week, and there has already been some outcomes, some responses to some of the controversy. So, of course, we're talking about, and this is like early in August, 2025. We're talking about two sort of controversial stories that came up in Tabletop around the same time, and we're talking about the case of CGE releasing a Harry Potter themed game and having a lot of understandable consternation and reaction from general audiences online. And they have since come out with a release. We'll touch upon what exactly they said in a moment. And then, pretty much at the very same time, Devir, who are, I guess, haven't released this game yet, but there's a game. No, they have released
It
it.
came out at
It's-
Gen Con, I believe.
Right. It's called Ace of Spades, and it's kind of like a Western themed card game, but they ran into some controversy because of some unfortunate and probably ill-conceived art direction choices for some of the cards used in the game, and there were people that were hurt, understandably, as a result. So maybe we can both talk about our thoughts on the reactions and the responses for those.
Yeah, I didn't want to conflate those two issues too much. It was interesting to see that the whole Devere controversy basically came up and was, I wouldn't say resolved, but they have responded to it within the last week, since we last recorded, and the time it took CGE to issue a third response, I guess, to their controversy.
Right.
So, yeah, they both have issued apologies and clear roadmaps, I guess, to what they propose to do to make amends here. To be clear, CGE have come out saying that they're still going to release the Harry Potter Codenames, that they will be donating 100% of profits to charitable organizations to be announced. And I mean, notably, they didn't name the IP or the author in question. I am sure because of disparagement contracts they have signed, which is unfortunate. They did, at least, at the very least, bare minimum, say trans rights are human rights. They did acknowledge the community there and the work that's been going on. I will say there is an official group called the Block Collective, led by game designer Marceline Lyman and a few other people who are doing a better effort of like actually campaigning with a clear goal, with solidarity of a larger group. I think that's something that's been missing from these sort of social causes in the board game space, is a larger initiative to sort of push goals and when requesting things like this of publishers.
Right. Now, this is a case of let's spell it out and be very clear is, CGE is still releasing the game. So
Mm-hmm.
the perceived harms or very factual and actual harms and the promotion of this harmful property and the support of this very terrible human being, the creator of the property, Harry Potter, is still real. Like that, the game's still going out. They're still supporting it in every way. Sure, they said we're not going to accept any profits from this, but they are still giving the royalties to the creator of Harry Potter. And and they're still going to profit from it. So they're doing that thing that you thought that they would. They're creating the carbon offset essentially.
It's not the result I would have liked. I mean, as again, I don't know what the arrangement is exactly. I imagine J.K. Rowling has already been paid as part of like a licensing
Right?
deal. The damage has already been done. That money is already going to harmful causes, and not to say that therefore it's fine to buy the game, but like I said, that trust has already been damaged, and I think we'll remain skeptical of CGE until we see concrete results. As far as the likely contracts that were signed, I think this is probably the most realistic result we could have hoped for. At the very least, it will discourage people from sort of hate purchasing the game just to spite the cause, because those profits will be going to ostensibly trans-friendly charitable causes.
Some people could argue that this is a net neutral, to borrow another greenwashing metaphor, a net neutral resolution to the affair, but it's really not, because it's putting poison out there in the world, and it's throwing out a salve at the same time, when it would be far better to not put that poison out there in the world.
Yep, yep, absolutely agreed. I said I would have preferred this not happened in the first place. It has. So I will remain skeptical until CG can show a long-term understanding of the damage they have caused, and be amending that in the long-term future.
Right. And let's be clear, people should not be buying the Harry Potter themed code names or any other
This does not release you of
properties.
that guilt.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's turn it over to the Devir side, and compare what their response was. So they basically said they're gonna recall the game, right?
So again, that game is Ace of Spades, sort of largely a solo Balatro-like game that was released at Gen Con. I don't want to go into specifics, but it did contain some very racially charged depictions in the artwork of this game that were called out by a few members of the community. There was it was a sort of secondary pushback as to why some other coverage of this game hadn't called this out. The game had been reviewed by multiple other platforms, which does raise some other questions as to how we cover games, and I think reminds us to be a little more mindful of the games that we're propagating and the stereotypes that we're propagating in discussing these games and advocating for them. But yes, the Devir did pretty much within a day issue an apology and a clear response that they are recalling these games, that they're reworking the art. They did like acknowledge the harm. That I will say is one thing. I'll give them to that in the apology, that they said, look, we didn't intend this, obviously, but harm has been done, which I think is a good first step in acknowledgement. Again, I will remain skeptical based on some of the background of the designer and the artist. I'm not familiar with this artist. I believe he's actually a comic book artist. Dave Rubin, by all accounts, is quite sort of liberally minded, and so a little surprising from
Yeah,
some of his fans. But
contract artists don't have a lot of control in what they create. I mean, if it was, entirely a questionable topic, this is one, or these are maybe three cards, because it's not just the slaver and the
fugitive,
fugitive. There was the case of some questionable, like, First Nations
yes,
characters, imagery, and things like that. Just some questionable motivations on all fronts. But a contract artist is being led by their clients and their art direction. So I don't think that absolves them of guilt, but I don't think that they're making the key decisions.
yeah. I
Let's
think
just say.
there is a larger discussion to be had there for another day, perhaps, about how like the artwork itself doesn't necessarily create the offense. The way the mechanics and like even just titles can frame that artwork can completely change you view certain things within the larger context of the game. I won't go into any more of it in this context here, but yeah, I am glad to see that they are responding to this. It did raise a larger question for me, though, in that they claimed they have had cultural consultants come in on previous games, especially those set in specific historical contexts. They didn't think it was necessary, as this is a fantastical universe, which I think is a cop out, personally. I don't think that even if your world is fictional, you're still pulling on real world analogs, literally real people in the case of Sitting Bull. And like we've discussed this from as far back as our first episode, where like Arnak from CGE, I had issues with archaeology in a fantastical context, and how that was depicted. So I don't think that just because it's fictional, reprieves you from being respectful when you're pulling from real world cultures.
Yeah, certainly not. That said, I think Devir made the more correct choice in this in actually recalling the product because what
Hmm.
they're trying to do is wholly undo the harm. There, like you said, there is some harm done there, but the product doesn't have to be, um, perpetrating hate or questionable depictions to anyone in the future, so long as every piece gets recalled. So I think they did make the more correct choice in comparing these two cases. But it is a deeper topic, though. There's some interesting writing on the topic. There's an article from BoardGameWire.com that is worth reading, and there are some key individuals in the kind of tabletop, I guess, industry, social sphere that were played a role in rectifying this situation. I know that our family plays
Yes.
games wrote a very concise letter, kind of addressing the issues and some of the concerns, and that I think three individuals, who was it? I think it was Jeff Engelstein, and then who was it? San Fun Lim, and Elizabeth
Oh, the
Hargrave.
tabletop designer. Oh, I can't remember the name. But they have
Yeah,
a sort of collective
they ha-
representing game designers. Yeah.
exactly. So they led a body, and that kind of addresses some general tabletop industry concerns, and then
Mm.
they touched upon the matter as well, as did Jeff Engelston in his newsletter, which I also read. So I caught some of his writing and thoughts on the subject there as well. So yeah, there's lots of angles to this, and we don't we don't purport to know every angle inside and out. So do some more reading if you're interested in this
Yep, I'll
topic.
drop some of those links in the show notes for those who have a little more perspective on this particular matter. Personally, I will remain skeptical of both Devere and CGE for the near future. They both were promising apologies, but an apology is just a first step of many.
Right.
I know I have a Devere game that I was planning to review in the near future that will be on hold for now until we can review this.
Right. So, rectifying these issues is a process, and we appreciate kind of in general that efforts are being made. Maybe all those solutions aren't perfect. Speaking of some other controversy, we don't intend to be the tabletop downers society here. We're the Omnigamers Club. But these are interesting topics, and it's actually good that some resolution, some responses are happening. So another controversy that came up online this past week was the kind of Ghibli-inspired games matter related to a TTRPG campaign for a. This is kind of a second campaign for a property called Obojima, I believe it's called.
It's like a supplement, third-party supplement for Dungeons and Dragons, right?
Right, and it's one that Wizards of the Coast have themselves promoted
Mm.
on, their website and other places like that. So it's essentially like a supported by Wizards sort of thing. But you're right, it is third party, and their claim to fame is, I think their first campaign made something like $2 million, $2 million US or something. So it's not a tiny project, and basically a few individuals online, mostly on Bluesky is where I saw it, raised concern that this Ghibli-inspired thing, quote unquote, that a lot of tabletop games tend to do are really, shallow appropriations of some really powerful, non-Western creators, namely, Hayao Miyazaki and a wave of anime and manga creators. Similarly, basically, some of their creations are being, I don't know, cheaply copied, or some aspects of them are being copied without really having any, consultation, for one, by East Asian or Japanese creators or consultants. Namely, these are a lot of, like white Western run studios that are putting these sorts of properties out. There's not a lot of like cultural depth, or there's not even the sort of like darker and more like deeper societal questions, like anti-war themes that many of Ghibli's actual properties cover. It's just the light and fluffy stuff. It's none of the
The cozy
deep.
feel good vibes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So it's really it's doing what a lot of Orientalism has done in the past. Hey, Wizards of the Coast, we haven't forgotten about Oriental adventures. It does what Orientalism does. It boils things down into an aesthetic. It ignores the deeper cultural ramification, and it also excludes individuals from some of the referenced cultures. And ultimately, it boils down to something that's unsatisfying for large groups of people. It's unfortunate that this sort of thing is happening, but the talk over this matter is good because it spreads information. There's a URL which we'll share as well in the notes. I read a little bit of it. It was really informative and does a much better job of explaining the deeper concerns than we have here. But it's making people think, and it's making people consider, and it's pointing out Orientalism where it continues to be utilized in the tabletop industry. It's utilized a lot. You were mentioning a game that came out recently that touched upon a tabletop game that has Ghibli-esque qualities
Well, I mean,
recently, right?
I just recently, on a recent episode here, discussed Koriko, a magical year, which was
Mm-hmm.
the solo journaling game, which was heavily inspired by obviously Kiki's delivery service. I thought it seemed quite respectful in how it approached that, and did dive into a lot of deeper themes. It wasn't just a surface level skin on that. It was quite a sort of emotionally evocative and complex game. I won't speak to any of the specifics in how it took that influence, as I'm not particularly familiar with it. But like I have definitely run into other examples. Like I mean, Devir published Bitoku, sort of big worker placement game, which was playing with the skin of Princess Mononoke without really engaging in any of the themes from that film. And I mean, I'd stop short of calling it offensive, but I would say it's incredibly sloppy and just misguided in how it's utilizing those themes.
Right. Even if it's not terribly offensive, it could just be just a shallow echo
Mm.
of something that does have a deeper quality to it. There's a reason why the world over loves many of the Ghibli pieces for all their warts and all, is because they are a little bit more authentic and less commercial than a lot of the like Hollywood style animated films that have come out over the years. They have a deep resonance to them, and because they are also exotic. Let's not sugarcoat it. Is they are a different view of the world, and they often cover different aspects of the world, some fantastical. But all that imagery comes from somewhere. It comes from some culture, some inspiration that Miyazaki and his team of collaborators have, and it doesn't come from copying other movies in a shallow attempt. So essentially, I don't want to harp too hard on this sort of thing, but and also like I'm not that deeply offended by works that like sort of echo themes from like one individual movie. Like that's been done the world over in all forms of art, right? Like we reference art and we comment on art on individual pieces.
I mean, Miyazaki himself was inspired by other media. I just picked up a copy of Howl's Moving Castle, which was written
Yep,
by a British woman.
exactly. Or Tales from Earthsea,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Another Western property as well. And Kiki's Delivery is also a novel, a Japanese novel, but it has, very European imagery. And it's not to say that you can't reference things from other cultures or other points in history, but you have to respect all parts of it. Anyways, yeah, Ghibli inspired. What bothers me is the pastiches with a lot of, a shallow effort and just the aesthetics of it, right? Culture is not a costume. you can't apply these things as aesthetics
And
and
just
aesthetics alone.
for some additional perspective, I did see a thread from Suzanne Sheldon who was posting about the sort of the act of cultural consultancy and how, I mean, that in itself, culture is not a monolith. The perspective of someone born and raised in Japan will be very different from a Japanese American who has faced potentially different kinds of bigotry and alienation from culture in living in America, right? Which I'm sure
Right.
you can speak from.
Right. Yeah. There's so many examples. Life of a Black American is very different from a Black European or an African in Africa. Obviously, there's so many aspects to this that not everyone can speak to. But the way you come to a deeper understanding is by involving more people,
Yes,
considering more
from those cultures.
perspective. Yeah, that would be ideal. Anyways, want to speak less, fewer downers and talk about more fun stuff. But it's important to recognize things that are happening, live at this moment.
Yeah, I did have a game I was going to talk about. I think I'll bank for now, just because we're running a little long here. I did play a role playing game for the first time this week, I will say. But yeah, I do want to address some of these sort of larger issues going on in the community while they're fresh in everyone's mind. And as I said, it's just a good reminder for us all to be more mindful about how we cover games, how we platform them, how we advocate them, even when we're criticizing games. We are still putting them out there in the world for better or worse.
Sure. All right, now let's move on to our next course. I think we should do the main course. And main course is really two courses. It's usually one thing from you and one thing from me. If it's all right, I would like to do my game first because I think it might be a little bit smaller of a
Okay.
bite. Your topic sounds pretty interesting, so I'm looking forward to hearing more
I have a
about it.
much bigger appetite today.
There you go. A deeper dish. Okay, so my dish in question is a older JRPG, and it's called Breath of Fire. Breath of Fire 1, because there have been 6 Breath of Fire games. This original came out in 1993 on the Super Nintendo, Super Famicom. It later came out on the GBA, but I'm playing it on Nintendo Switch through the Nintendo Classics online service. And it's part of the basic package, so you can get it for, what is it, $25 Canadian per year on the very most basic package. So tons of fun games on there. Anyways, Breath of Fire for SNES. I've always been interested in this series. It's a RPG by Capcom. And you don't really think about Capcom for RPGs except more, I don't know, more action RPGs recently, right? They have, of course, the Monster Hunter
Resident
series.
Evil.
Resident Evil is more action. They have the Monster Hunter Stories, which is more
True.
JRPG, but that's a bit more of a spin-off. But there is Stories 3 coming out for Switch 2, which is going to be exciting. But anyways, this is, by their estimation, Capcom's best known and most successful role-playing game series. Basically, this is a popular series, and each successive entry has kind of ratcheted up in popularity. I think Breath of Fire 5, Dragon Quarter on the PlayStation 2 being the most popular, and Breath of Fire 6 was released in 2016, so, fairly recently.
Had you played any of this series before?
I had not played them at all, although I've heard that lots of people talk about Breath of Fire 3 and Breath of Fire 4 as their like top favorite JRPGs of all time sort of thing. So I always thought to myself, I'm gonna play that series, and this provided a great chance.
I'll be honest. At some point in the past, I've sort of filed this away as the same, or at least somehow connected to Fire Emblem, and just thought it was part of all one universe. I don't know how I got confused there. I did not realize this was a distinct sort of RPG series.
That's fair. Those game series kind of came out at the same time, and they have similar sounding names. Now, Breath of Fire is a fairly straightforward JRPG. In fact, it's pretty basic. Like, it came out on the Super Nintendo, so it doesn't have the legacy of earlier games like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest or even Phantasy Star, which you and I played more recently. That came out on Master System. So Super Nintendo, Breath of Fire came out, I think, like a few months before Final Fantasy VI, for
Oh.
instance, on the SNES. So that gives you a kind of a comparison where this is coming from. And compared to that, I will say straight out, Breath of Fire 1 is pretty rudimentary. I saw that you were playing a little bit. What were your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I played about an hour of this. I've still only got the one party member, so still very early. I beat the first boss, basically. And yeah, it is pretty bare bones in terms of the classic JRPG structure. You, like, obviously turn-based. You've got attack, you've got magic, you've got items. I don't even have any magic yet. I can just hit things with a sword. There is an auto battle system I saw, which is a quality of life feature in a much older game I did see, but yeah, there's not much going on tactically or strategically yet. I did interestingly compared to Fantasy Star out of the gate I had to grind curiously, like I didn't have enough to get to the next from the first town to the next town without like going back and healing up a couple of times. It's just you'll get killed within a couple of battles basically. So I had to grind around the starting town quite a bit, which was the same as Fantasy Star. And I'm not sure if that was just a given in game in JRPGs back in that time period.
Yeah, I think in early JRPGs, grinding was fairly understood that it's
Mm.
a thing you needed to do. As I recall in Fantasy Star 1, the regions are very like separated, aren't they? There's like often these like bridges that you have to cross to get to new areas.
Almost like a
And
Metroidvania sort of segmented off until you get new abilities or new characters and
yeah,
yeah.
it's a gating system, right? It's a
Mm.
literal gating system. Phantasy Star had these kind of land bridges that had key cards, and Dragon Quest had a literal bridge that was out, and only by rescuing the princess in the first tutorial mission did the king decide to rebuild the bridge, literally giving you access to the rest of the world. So these were the strategies of early JRPGs, and they worked. And people understood, well, in this early part of the world, you're going to be fighting these piddly mobs. And then as soon as you step over that bridge, you're going to be fighting significantly stronger ones. So I think that was a well understood thing. You could kind of know by grinding in certain segments of the earth that of the map that you would be accessing different creatures, or by going in the forest segments. Quite often, the monsters would be tougher. Caves certainly a lot tougher than that. So I think these are sort of like strategies that were kind of built into early JRPG playing individuals. Anyways, back to Breath of Fire. So this game notably lacks a lot of features that I guess I got more familiar with in the JRPGs I've been playing recently. Like I've been playing for about 18 hours. I haven't beaten this game, by the way. But that said, I only have three party members. Whereas a game like, Phantasy Star 2, when you play a dozen hours, you have access to, four or five characters, and you can swap out characters out of your party, much like later Final Fantasy games would do. And this game only gives you the three. You don't get to choose which ones. The party I have so far is well balanced, but I don't get to control what to put my skill points into. I don't
Mm.
get to control which spells my characters learn. It's just all auto leveling for you. So that's a little bit disappointing in this day and age. Even by 1993, that was pretty rudimentary stuff that much more basic games on 8-bit were doing already.
Final Fantasy was getting quite experimental at the time, I believe.
Absolutely, yeah. I think a lot of people paint Final Fantasy with this kind of really basic brush, but I think each instance was doing some really innovative stuff, and also the game was really innovating straight out of the gate with Final Fantasy 1, the fact that you can choose which spells that the mages would be equipped with, and you couldn't equip all of them. So you actually had to really make some game-changing choices, even from early on. That part was really cool, and you can change character classes in this one. Only at key points in the story do the characters change at all. That said, the Breath of Fire 1 does have some charm to it. I think the
Mm.
most memorable part about this game is the world building. And you'll only see this really as you go further into the game, but each of the areas, the towns that you end up going to, has a sort of unique quality to it. Each town has a sort of scenario that's going on, or like a theme to it. Like one of the towns is the thieves town, and everyone's trying to steal from you, and everyone's trying to do a fast one on you, and it's kind of funny, right? It's like going to like the thieves guild for the first time in Skyrim or something like that.
I just found a town where it's all full of guards and they won't let me pass it. Like you have to sneak around past them. I'm not giving any context for why these guards
Yeah.
are here and why I have to sneak past them, but
Yeah, but like this sort of each town is a kind of like a scenario that you have to overcome, almost like it's like a boss or something like that. It's or more like it's like an adventure game. And I really like some early JRPGs for how much they blend like adventure game aspects into them. Because quite often they're like hunt down the missing piece to a puzzle. It's rarely just about brute forcing it, although grinding and brute forcing it is part of it. There's usually a special key you have to find. There's usually a special NPC you have to find and give them the special item in exchange for another special item. And this is no different. But at very least, the towns are unique and they're memorable. Some of the characters that you meet in these towns are quite memorable. This game also features some things that like more trad fantasy games wouldn't include, like there's Beastmen along with regular humans. There's also like a giant robot. Like a giant robot. We talked about Ghibli, kind of like a Nausicaa style, like abandoned robot, giant robot that, of course, begs to be explored because you can go inside of it.
epic.
So yeah, so there are some really kind of cool, memorable aspects in this one as well. So
The opening cutscene was quite elaborate, like
hmm,
big scale anime fight scene. The two sprites bumping up against each other. For its time, I'm sure it was quite thrilling.
yeah, well, Capcom has always been aces at its artwork, so no doubt there. The music is quite nice as well too in this game, although fairly basic. So there's a lot of good things going for this game as well. It's just unfortunate that it's so bare bones. So that part of it is I'm not really singing too many praises for. Another cool thing about this game is that I said you're very limited in the party that you have. You have these three party members so far. I imagine that's not all the party members you will have access to, but one cool aspect of this game is that you can reorder who the leader of the party is. And I know, many games let you do that. I think even like Phantasy Star let you do that. But in this game, it has a side effect. Depending on who you choose to lead your party, these kind of world-changing effects will come into effect. For instance, one of the characters is said to be a great sort of like tracker. So only if you have this one character equipped as your leader can you actually walk through forests. Otherwise, they're solid objects that are obstacles to you. So, like, that's a big effect, right? Another one is a character who is an archer. You can literally shoot bows out on the overworld map and hunt for like creatures
I was wondering about
and
those
skins.
deer that were running around the over map and
Yeah, exactly. It's like
okay.
why are these beasts, why are these creatures out in the world? It's because you can hunt them down when you have access to another character. So that part of it is cool. That part of it gives it a lot of personality.
And let's each character shine outside of just the combat.
Yeah, and that's a good thing because you can only do certain quests or interact with certain NPCs if you have the right character as your leader, and that part is very cool. Adds to the sort of adventure game type aspect of it. It's a good thing that they do that because otherwise the characters are pretty forgettable. They don't have they're all silent protagonists essentially. All the world talks about your characters, but your characters don't talk to the world. And aside from a pretty early introductory mission, this is actually really cool. When you're introduced to the second party member, you actually abandon the first party. Like he goes to sleep, and then you take on the role of the second party member, and then eventually you get put back together. So it's kind of like a side story. And that part was actually really cool. It was quite cinematic. There was cutscenes. It was really aces. So I
Divergent
really,
storytelling. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, I really wish they did more of that. And I haven't seen it yet again, but that sequence was memorable. So other good things and bad things. There's some unfortunate aspects to this game. I guess due to memory limits or just screen limits, I guess a lot of the items in your inventory have like these
Mm.
mysterious names like G-Rod and
FSTN and BSTN.
yeah, like what do these things mean? Like you can sort of guess, like maybe that means stun or something like that.
Unless
But
they do, like you can highlight items and it will tell you what they do.
right,
So in some cases, you can use this item in battle. Okay, not very helpful, but it
yeah,
gives you some
exactly.
context. Yeah.
So unfortunate like UI challenges there, and maybe these challenges weren't there in the original Japanese language carts.
We discussed that in Fantasy Star, how you can express so much more in 4 characters in Japanese.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's a bit unfortunate. The monsters you fight are mostly forgettable. There's some cool artwork for some. I think you shared an image of some
That frog seems all right.
rock and frog monster that you get to attack. And in one case, there's one of the mobs is called a derogatory name we no longer use for people of short stature. So
Okay.
that part's a little bit
Hey,
unfortunate.
Borderlands is still pulling that off, so I mean,
Hey, yeah.
badly, but
They're trying to shy away from it
yeah.
with newer editions. There is another point where you have to grind for a decent chunk of money before you can progress. So unfortunate aspects like that. But with some fairly more modern features like this, the save states that you mentioned. No, sorry, not the save states. The auto battle that you mentioned.
Yes.
That's a nice feature that makes it a little bit more manageable. And eventually you get to unlock a fast travel spell.
Nice.
So that saves you a bunch of time as well. And with save states, which you get, only through benefit of having Nintendo Switch classics, or ROMs, I suppose, it's quite easy to play. So I will probably continue playing this to the end to see the end of the story, and I'm enjoying it. I would just say it is a light-hearted recommendation, but there's probably a dozen deeper JRPGs you can play before this. So, if you're just looking for something to play, sure, try it out.
Yeah, I mean, after that initial sort of grinding that was required, it did pretty quickly fall into a pretty seamless experience. I was getting plenty of upgrades for that first dungeon and able to chew through that pretty quickly. And it wasn't particularly engaging in terms of the actual tactics, but I was moving through the game at a fair clip. Looking forward to seeing how it continues. I'll continue with it for now as well, and also just curious to see how the series evolves over time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very curious to see how the later games pan out. And I would say overall, the dungeons I've encountered so far are mostly fair. Like they're at least somewhat engaging, and they're not deviously unfair like some of the Phantasy Star later dungeons became. So it has that going for it too. So yeah, kind of mid recommendation there for.
These games are also just interesting to explore as a product of their time, as we were discussing with like Fantasy Star. And I think we've both also discussed that we've recently picked up the Final Fantasy Pixel releases that we will likely be exploring at some point.
Yeah, that's right. I played a decent chunk of Final Fantasy 1 on my trip, so let's cover that one soon.
Okay.
So that was Breath of Fire 1.
Yes, excellent. Well, not to become the Nintendo podcast, but I think
Hey, we're dropping an Xbox, so it's got to go somewhere.
That's just it. Yeah, I have shifted, as discussed previously, to the Nintendo Switch as my primary platform, and not having Game Pass does make it difficult to cover more recent games. Obviously a lot of most games these days are coming out on Switch, except for some of the AAA exclusives. But I was excited to see a lot of indies coming out. There was an indie direct a few days ago that had me quite excited. Some of the previous demos that I tried on Steam coming to Switch, so I'll be checking them out there. Like UFO 50, which I've discussed previously, and figured would be perfect for a handheld console, and unfortunately didn't have a Steam Deck at the time, but is now on Nintendo Switch. So I think
Maybe
that's
I'll have
perfect
to pick it up.
So all that to say, I as previously discussed, I have a Nintendo Switch 2 now, and I thought it's time to maybe talk through some of my initial impressions on the console itself and some of the early games there. I mean, the console itself, impressions are pretty short. It's got a bigger screen, I guess. It's largely the same as the original Switch in terms of the general the form factor. The UI is basically the same. I will say the Joy-Cons, the way they sort of click onto the side, is this it gives me the good tingle. I'll say, like, it is incredibly satisfying rather than the sort of the slide of the previous ones. It just has that great clack tactility. Other than that, it plays great. It's compatible with my old controllers as well, so it's pretty seamless. I still don't understand virtual cartridges though, man. I don't know what they're doing there. Every time they try to clarify it, they just create more questions. And like they had the Nintendo Direct last week where they had these big explainer segments like, well, if we show this symbol, it's available on Switch 1. If we show this symbol, it's available on Switch 2. But like, what happens if they only show Switch 1? Does that mean it's not available on Switch 2? They're just creating more confusion. They really need to simplify this whole process. I don't know.
Yeah, I've talked a couple of times about virtual cartridges. It's really unfortunate. I don't think I'll be buying a lot of cartridges if I ever upgrade to the Switch 2 because I'm really kind of against this whole keycard system, and I don't want to derail your talk, but you're right. Virtual keycards is a factor if you have multiple Switch consoles in your household. I imagine you have at least two because you had Switch 1 and now Switch 2.
Yes.
And if you have more than two, now you're in real trouble because you can actually only link two accounts per two consoles per account, I believe.
Right.
So I couldn't have my account on three Switches, which is quite awkward because my account is where we bought most of the family games that might need to be played in the living room while I'm playing some of those games up in the bedroom or something like that.
Yeah. And it's also more complicated with my daughter has decided she wants her own profile on the Switch now and her own save files. And like that complicates the virtual card system because like I think it was Animal Crossing she tried to load, which could load the game, but not the DLC because that had to be connected to an actual Nintendo account. So now I've got to sign her up for one of those, I guess. I don't know. I have to start navigating the world of parental controls on phones and video game consoles now, unfortunately.
It's best to start them early because then that'll be the water that they're swimming in.
Yes.
You don't want to introduce them when it's too late.
And risk her losing her Animal Crossing world. So, that to say, I've played some games on the Nintendo Switch 2. Obviously, the big launch title was Mario Kart World, which I was quite excited for. Obviously, the big new feature is the open world segment where all of the tracks exist within one giant open world, and there is like a single player mode that you can just drive around and explore. There's some mini games and challenges you can do in there. None of it seems particularly thought out. Like all you ever get from those is stickers. But there is just such a simple thrill to driving around this huge open world. I mean, my Mario Kart of choice growing up was 64. And like I had that distinct memory of, I think it was Peach's Raceway. I can't remember the exact track, but there's the track with Peach's Castle. And when you realize you can drive off the track and into the Mario Kart 64 castle and drive around, that was just mind-blowing. And of course, you want to do that with all of the tracks. Now you can. And that's just fantastic. I just would love spending 10 minutes driving around this world and exploring and just the simple thrills, especially with all these tricks you can do now. They've added a lot more little tricks you can do with the car. You can grind on rails like Tony Hawk. For some reason, you can jump onto walls and boost along there. There's like all the slipstreaming you can do. You can do the drift while driving in a straight line to get a small boost. So there's a lot of little tricks you can do that basically up the skill ceiling in lots of small ways. And now it just basically feels like you're driving around this giant Tony Hawk level and just pulling off tricks. And I mean, I'm generally not like one for sandbox games, But I do enjoy this in small bursts, and my daughter loves it. She had no interest in playing the races at all. She just wants to drive around and explore, basically. Obviously, you've got new characters. They basically have all costumes now for all of the characters. So you can play as Waluigi, or Pro Racer Waluigi, or Vampire Waluigi. I mean, obviously, you can place other characters with Waluigi, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. Yeah, a lot of simple joys here. But there are, it is very confusing. Like the way the characters are all set out, like you don't have here's one character in all of their costumes. Like they're all mixed and shuffled together in really confusing ways. There is some fuzziness to the levels. Like all the levels are like there are distinct tracks, but often when you choose one of those, you're not playing just that track and doing 3 laps on it. You're driving from the track you were previously on to the new track and doing one loop on that. I have it. A lot of people are quite upset about that, and they just want to run laps. I don't mind that so much. I love the transitional states and like these wide open roads and just the thrill of the open road, and just lets you breathe a little more. But it does create this fuzziness as to you're not exactly sure what you're getting, which can be good and bad. I can see some people bristling with that. There is some more dynamism to like tracks changing. Like one track could be widely different based on which track you're coming from. You never know exactly what you're getting, but that could be good or bad if depending on how you feel. The big issue I do have is the number of players. This is upped the scale to 24 players, which fantastic sense of scale. It is thrilling seeing all of those races. It does create one giant crab bucket. Like it feels good when you've got a streak, but the moment you get hit by one shell, now you've got 20 people passing by you, each hitting you with a different weapon as they go past, and you're just getting hit by weapon after weapon for like 10 seconds, and now you're 24th. And that doesn't feel good.
Getting dogpiled.
Yeah, I mean that's more of an issue online. I don't think it's going to happen quite so much with AI or probably playing with friends. I think playing online is fun, but just too chaotic for me broadly, other than in short bursts. So I don't think I'll be doing much of that. There is the new, oh, what do they call it? It's not the Grand Prix. It's basically a battle royale mode where it's like several tracks joined together, but each leg of the track, the last 4 races get kicked out. Until it's only 4 races left for the final leg, and then you have to win that, and that's a lot of
Like
fun.
a elimination mode.
Yeah, I do love this really long races. Mario Kart 8 felt like it wouldn't let races last very long. Like Rainbow Road was cut down to a single lap, and so many other tracks were relatively short. This is willing to let the tracks breathe, both in size and in length, in ways that I enjoy. The chaos clashes with that a little bit, especially with longer races. Like if you're just having a bad time and trailing, you'll be trailing behind for a long time till the end of the race. Obviously, with the elimination, doesn't matter so much because you'll just get eliminated, right? Um, I do like the track design broadly. In like Mario Kart 8 also just all the tracks looped and curved constantly in ways that I just found really like confusing, and all the tracks kind of felt the same. When everything's constantly doing the loop, like no track is special, right? And I think these tracks are a little more reserved in that sense. Like they're still incredibly vibrant and have a great sense of place with all the decorations, but the tracks themselves aren't quite as elaborate that you can just be driving down a straight line and be focused on slipstreaming and some of those other tricks more often rather than just constantly curving and having no idea where you are in the broader scheme of things. So I do like that it has just a broader sense of place both within the track and within the larger world. So I do enjoy the design here. There are some weird fuzzy edges around like the characters and the track selection and like the chaos that I don't entirely jive with. But it is just a really solid entry. That, like I said, especially just driving around by yourself, the simple thrill. My daughter loves it. That's all she wants.
Sounds good then. Yeah, I guess that whole transitioning makes it a little bit less structured, so you don't have to be like on it. Because, a race with 3 laps is a race with 3 laps, even though Mario Party traditionally has been very whatever. No, relaxed is the right word, but forgiving, let's just say,
Mm.
with all the different, items like the blue shell and things like that to make it basically a toss up who's going to win. But otherwise, probably the best racer is going to win most of the time. But this one, if it's just kind of like transitioning between laps and each of the tracks only going one time through, it's a bit more of like a experiential thing, perhaps.
Yeah, and like, Rainbow Road is incredibly transcendental in terms of the experience. So like, you start off on the ground and then you get shot up into space, and then like do one like it's a really long track, and I do just love vibing out, especially if you're just playing with AI and not worrying about the crab bucket constantly pulling you down.
Yeah, so you just get to see more cool stuff, get to
Yeah,
do more cool stuff
yeah.
theoretically.
Yeah, and it is one I want to try with friends, perhaps, and see if the chaos is a little more like brought down to a fairer level, perhaps, when you don't have just
Yeah,
24 people going nuts constantly.
I did mean to ask you, have you tried any of the online multiplayer stuff?
A little bit, yeah, and that's mostly where I found the chaos to be just it's just a notch too high to really find much satisfying. Because I mean, I oftentimes I'll have a shell, I'll nail someone with the shell, and they'll just like brush it off like nothing happened. And I'm led to believe it's often lag. It's like something like it connected on your end, but not on their end. But that it is incredibly unsatisfying. Obviously, when then you get hit by the shell, and then 10 more shells as everyone overtakes you, and it's very swingy. More so than previous entries, and that is unsatisfying online. Maybe with a smaller group of friends, won't feel as bad.
Have you done the voice chat thing and the camera
Oh
thing?
no, definitely not.
Because I think you're supposed to be able to use like a regular webcam, not just the dedicated one, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I've got something that could plug into it. I don't particularly want to interact with randoms in Mario Kart and hear all the trash talk.
Yeah, just wondering if you were hanging out with people you knew, for
No,
instance.
no, no.
All right, good to know.
So, migrating from there, transitioning to the latest game on Nintendo Switch is Donkey Kong Bonanza. So this came out just a couple of weeks ago, and I was hoping to get it for the flight back from Australia, which I did like the previous flight back. Sorry, not Pokemon Scarlet and Violet came out like that day. Grabbed a copy from the airport, played it on all the flight home. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they didn't have Donkey Kong this time, so I had to wait till I got home. But did pick that up. So I have a note here. It just says smashy smashy. If you've seen any of the trailers for this, obviously this is leaning into destructible environments. This is a 3D platformer game akin to Donkey Kong 64, I guess. And you exploring the world, but you can dig through all the surfaces, down and up, and just about every surface is breakable. There are obviously limits to that. There will be a hard like floor and sometimes walls based on where you are. It obviously brings to mind games like Red Faction Gorilla or the Red Faction series, I guess broadly. Kind of pioneered that destructible environment. There are others that I can't quite recall, but there is something like that does tap into something primal, just digging through the tunnels and making your own path. It's I am reminded of like Tears of the Kingdom. Sometimes you can see something you need to get to, and you're thinking through all the puzzles, and you realize, oh, I can just rewind time, and I'm up there. Like it's so easy to forget that you have this very simple tool that you can just cut straight through any wall, and you've got what you need. So most of the times, any problem is solved by just punch through the wall. That is satisfying. It does get a little old after a little bit of time, but there's lots of micro goals. There's constantly like feeding you little micro dopamine hits of banana, a fossil, a challenge room. So I am developing the school of game design in regards to this game. I don't know if that's a good thing. Like I can see a lot of people finding that incredibly satisfying. I find the constant distractions a bit much. Like I am thinking back to Donkey Kong 64 or Banjo Kazooie, were formative games for me, and like or Mario 64, where there might be 10 stars or 10 jiggies in this world. Each one had a sort of a key pathway to how you get to it, a key sense of whether it was platforming or puzzle solving. There was a flow, a solution to follow to get to that, and a sense of build up and progression to achieve that, and then a big celebration. Oh, I got the star, great. Here it's like I punch through a wall, I get a banana. Oh, there's another banana. I just punch through this wall, another banana. But there's another currency like banana chips that buy bananas. The gold that you get, you can use to buy bananas. Also, maps that let you find bananas. So everything just is constantly bananas. No banana feels special in that sense. So it's a little bit of an anticlimax. And I know I've been reading a book on a book called Addiction by Design, which is about gambling machines. And I have spoken before about some of my distaste for addictive properties in games. But one thing that really came to mind reading that book was something called the flow state, and that I think we have heard about all of these games talk about that in a good way. Addiction is good, flow state good. Here, I need a little more friction. Like there's too much flow, not enough friction to actually give me some resistance and satisfaction in finding each of these things. So I am finding it satisfying on a very primal level. It's not quite hitting me on that higher level that I need. Like I was listening to a podcast with Raymap. I think it was Janet Garcia made the comparison of like this feels like an Easter egg hunt rather than a scavenger hunt. Like we have an Easter egg hunt here with the kids, and there's just Easter eggs all over the lawn, and like, okay, I can see 10 Easter eggs from right here. None of them are particularly satisfying. Maybe if you're 6, I don't know. But for me, I find myself wanting something a little bit more, perhaps.
Yeah, that maybe I'm bringing up a bit of a controversial point here, but I think I might have mentioned it before, but I'm just not into platformers. I don't think I've been into a certainly 2D platformer since Super Mario World, so that's Super Nintendo era. And I'm putting aside Metroidvanias, because that's a totally different creature. I really like Metroidvanias quite a bit. And I think, having heard your explanation right now, it's primarily because of the friction. Like, I don't mind challenge, like some of the levels in, I think that more recent, what was it, Prince of Persia 2D side-scroller one, were quite excellent. The bosses all felt really, really satisfying. I think Metroid Dread, which is a fantastic, a really slick, modern 2D Metroidvania, is really pleasing experience, but also plays quite smoothly. So I do really enjoy those. But something about platforming, I just feel like it's just missing something. Like getting from one point to the end, or just collecting a bunch of stuff, doesn't really ever seem satisfying to me, because it's usually not pushing forward a story, and just having collected stuff isn't enough for me.
I do enjoy that, but this really does just feel like a checklist, whereas previous games, they felt like a chapter. Like Mario 64, every star felt like a chapter, in that you literally exit the level and re-enter it again, and now things are slightly different. Here it's just a checklist of 50 bananas.
I feel like the 3D platformers really introduced that. It's like, let's collect stuff, or let's run through these kind of like, what obstacle courses, essentially. I think they took the more obstacle course approach ever since Mario 64. That's when my real distaste for, well, I guess 3D platformers really started, from the very first one. I'm not a fan of 64. It's kind of just lost the magic to me, and was trying kind of some more off the wall stuff. Not necessarily a bad thing, but just like whatever. I see penguin races. It's not doing anything for me.
Yeah, I mean, so this is definitely evolving that to its like final endpoint, and just all friction has been removed. And the clearest comparison is probably Mario Odyssey, which was just constant moons everywhere you look. There's a moon under that rock. There's a moon behind that tree. Again, constant little micro doses. Every goal is a micro goal of like 5 to 10 seconds. There's very little sense of like a broader goal. I mean, there is in these levels, like you have to progress to a higher point where you might, like, there'll be a boss or the tunnel to the next level, but like there's so many little distractions along the way that make it really fuzzy as to like what that goal is. Like you just keep getting lost. The world design I found was just very confusing. Even there is a very good map that you can zoom out and turn it around in ways that are really helpful, but this the level design is so chaotic and busy that it's really hard to get a sense of perspective. Like those older Mario and like Banjo-Kazooie levels were so focused and like clear senses of landmarks that you could see and position yourself as a point of reference. And this doesn't really have that. It's just, yeah, especially with all the destructibility. It all feels like a play box, really, rather than a thought out, structured world to transition through. Especially like all of the upgrades you get, like you eat all these bananas just funnel into like a skill tree that feels like a Horizon Zero Dawn. Oh, it's an extra heart. Or you can your punches hit harder. There's a few that give you abilities, but those are just giving you more tools for the sandbox. They're not really like creating different ways for you to interact with the world. They can never be important. They can never be vital to how you do solve these puzzles. Like in Banjo Kazooie, oh, you've got the thing that lets you run up hills now, which changes how you navigate the world, for example. And these can never be that. It's always like the Tears of the Kingdom, just also another little tool in your
Yeah.
bucket and spade.
They don't want to go to the extent of making it a Metroidvania or at least even a Zelda
Yeah.
where they give you the hook shot, which gives you access to this whole other area. That's a bridge too far for this type of game, I suppose.
There are a couple of like ultimate abilities. There's like three I've come across so far that let you transform and do have slightly more elaborate. Like they are sort of gated to of certain sections that will let you float or break through certain unbreakable materials. Those they're somewhat satisfying, but again, they just like let you smash things harder. Largely so far, they're pretty fairly simple. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed in just that. I mean, maybe I just don't have the love in my heart anymore. But I just also am a little disillusioned with the modern game design and the constant micro dosing, and I can feel my attention span dying and atrophying, basically.
Yeah, I can't say that I loved this developer's previous outing. This team did work on Odyssey,
I
right?
believe so. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of lost interest in Odyssey fairly early, and maybe that's just because I have no joy in my heart. But yeah, you're right. It just seems kind of scattershot, and there's no through line, and seems kind of pretty chaotic. That said, I've heard that there's really quite high reviews and generally quite
Yeah.
positive feeling about this game in the game press.
A lot of people want those small prolific thrills, right? Of the constant little hits of ooh banana, ooh banana, ooh banana. I obviously, I mean, I've spoken about how I've bristled against Balatro and similar games that are giving you those lots of micro doses and small goals. The flow state doesn't really do it for me anymore. I need some friction. I need something to hold on to in terms of the world, the setting, the characters. Like I'm a little disappointed that Pauline, obviously, she's with you, she can talk, but all she can really do is sing at things. Like you hold the sing button and she destroys some barriers. There's all these like fantastical all the villains. There's like this motley crew of villains that just they don't talk. They just like have the Banjo Kazooie mumbling voices. I would have loved to see some more character to this game, rather than just the monkey grunting, I guess.
I've heard that this is a very sort of Disney Pixar kind of story.
Yeah. I did, in comparison, go back and play Donkey Kong Country. Speaking of Nintendo Online, it was also available in there. I'd played most of it growing up, so that was the original Super Nintendo game, and that was fun to go back to. It is a pure platformer. Your goal is get from A to B. There's a few collectibles along the way, but largely the progression, the platforming is the challenge, and it is quite challenging. I was surprised, incredibly punishing both with the lives and like the save points. I lost some progress a couple of times there. Yeah, it was very punishing, but I did have fun, and it was incredibly creative. I was surprised how early they got really creative with the levels, into both in the visual designs, but also the mechanics, like playing with the different times of day and like the lighting. You sometimes oh the lights out in this level. You have to activate these switches to turn the lights back on, and they're depletable resources. They were quite creative very early on in that series, and I'm looking forward to revisiting 2 and 3 as well.
Yeah, I think those games just came out a little bit too late in my Super Nintendo playing career, or just didn't have any interest in platforms at that part. That I don't have a close relationship to Donkey Kong. But once I get my hands on a Switch 2, I am interested in trying this one out.
Okay. And the music in those old games still slaps as well. That was one thing that's disappointed me. The music just doesn't really hit me in these new games. There's like one or two tracks that are okay, but there's no funk to these tracks.
Not Funky Kong enough for you?
No, no, need more Funky Kong.
A shame. There is the DK rap though, right?
We don't talk about that.
All right. Now, should we talk about next course, perhaps?
Yes, let's jump to dessert where we talk about some non-gaming treats we've been enjoying. Mark, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. I will talk. I think last time I talked about a book, a memoir. This time I'm talking about a manga. Generally, I'm going to be talking about a manga or an anime or a movie or show. So here goes. I'm going to be talking about one I just finished reading today, I think for the third time. It's Gokurakugai. Gokurakugai is a fairly recent manga series. I don't think it has an animation as of yet.
Yes.
Yeah, they're all becoming animated at this point. It was originally published by Jump Square, in Jump Square by Shueisha. In North America, it's published by Viz. You can get it in the trade paperback form. And this is a pretty interesting, still shonen fare, but it's interesting in a few different ways. Gokuraku means paradise, by the way, and gai just means like generally a neighborhood. But that's said kind of ironically. Like this area that the action is happening is kind of shabby. It's kind of like a Chinatown themed area, but squarely in modern day Japan, but with a few twists. It features a pair of protagonists that are kind of like a bit of an odd couple. There's this one cool, collected, kind of tall, older sister type. She says very little and has a lot of glares, and but she's got these cool demon blood powered pistols at her disposal. And she's partnered with this quirky, shorter, younger, high energy, half demon partner. And just like the looks and their personalities couldn't be farther apart. But these two together, they run what's called a troubleshooter agency, the Gokurakugai Troubleshooter Agency. And they're kind of like not exactly guns for hire. They're not muscle, but they're doing like kind of private investigation type work. But on the side, it turns out that they're hunting demons, wouldn't you know it? So this this just like the looks of this manga are quite appealing. The art is really sharp, and the aesthetics, like it has this like very kind of like Chinese themed artwork to it. Takes place in Chinatown. The costumes of the characters are kind of like Chinese inspired, definitely through a Japanese lens. And we talked about Orientalism before. The Japanese have been guilty of Orientalism
Mm.
when it comes to the Chinese in very many ways. There's a long history about it. But there's a certain Chinese aesthetic that the Japanese do tread upon a lot. Think about Macross or Robotech. Kind of remember some aspects there. Even in things like the Yakuza game series, for instance. A lot of Chinese imagery
Mm.
in there
Mm.
as well. But in this case, it's quite attractive. Just graphically speaking, graphic design and the costumes are really sharp. So this troubleshooter agency, the thing about them is that these guys seem like really dodgy. They're one of the first case that they start the story with is like a kind of like a it just seems like this kind of dodgy guy that's trying to find proof and eliminate it to avoid kind of a scandal to be released, and the troubleshooters are extorting the guy for money, but the guy has the money. But when it comes to this kind of this young character who is having trouble with a missing friend, then the characters like real hearts of gold come out. So they're kind of the bad guys with the Hearts of Gold storyline. So there's a certain sort of appeal and charm to these characters.
Anti-hero type vibes.
Yeah, but they also protect the community. They're
Mm.
for the people. They're kind of like living day to day, living day by day, just trying to pay the bills and trying to keep their stomachs filled. But they're also protecting the community along the way. So that part of it is really enjoyable. In this community of Gokurakugai, there's a string of disappearances, and this is set up pretty early, right in the first couple of pages. And basically, each chapter is like a case of a missing person, or basically these demon hunters, when they're not being hired by a client, they are dealing with rumors of mystical appearances here, kind of tawdry disappearances there. They're hunting down these rumors and trying to solve each case. So each chapter essentially is like fully resolved in its own case. So you
Case
can
of the week.
mostly case of the week sort of
Yeah.
thing, and it works out really well. But behind that, you can tell that there's a little bit of mystery. Like they sort of hint that the characters have they haven't been together very long, and the lady character has a personal case that she's tracking down, and she's kind of getting the rumor mill to help her track down her personal case while she's solving cases for clients. So you can tell that there's some sort of mystery that they're trying to set up over there. And then the younger dude character, he seems like a little bit of a fish out of water. He's really gung ho, really wants to get rid of these demons for some reason. But he also seems like a fish of water out of water that doesn't understand kind of how the world works and is a little bit naive. So you got to wonder, like, how does this guy survive up until this point? Maybe he seems like he just fell out of the sky or something like
It's a
that.
twist.
Yeah, so they're building up these mysteries,
Mm.
and of course, for me, I can't resist a mystery. So volume one, I've only read volume one so far. For what it's worth, in English and in Japanese,
Mm.
and it's really quite worthwhile. Although some of the stories go to some darker places, like there are, content warning, there are cases of, parental abuse, there is cases of murder, there's like serial killers. But that said, even though the imagery can be dark and the action can be violent, the story is kind of woven through with a lot of humor and a lot of charm. There's hope in these kind of like hopeless kind of heroes, and there's charm and there's a lot of care in this community that the characters are supporting. And like I said, there's that mystery underlining it there. So I want to keep reading this one. It is still an ongoing series, I believe. I think it premiered in 2023 or 2024,
Mm.
and it's on its fifth or sixth volume right now. So, if you want another shonen type story, but one that's not like so sugary sweet and, youthful, little kid like, this one might appeal to you.
Excellent. I'll keep an eye out for the inevitable anime adaptation.
Very cool. That's Gokurakugai, Gokurakugai.
I didn't mention last episode when I was exploring Kinokuniya, I did end up picking up the next volume of Nausicaa, which I've been reading through, but the library that I've been getting them from didn't have one particular volume for some reason. So I hit a
That
wall there. But
sucks.
now I've bought that, so I'll be continuing with that. But
Very nice.
also,
I'm sadly never finished that series, which is like maybe something I'm just holding on to for
hmm,
a rainy day.
I want it to be over.
But the graphic novels are pretty impressive.
Enjoying them so far. But also while I was in Australia and staying with my parents and looking through their one streaming service, like trying to find a movie that we could all enjoy, I settled on one that I've been meaning to watch for a while, and that is Legend. This is the Ridley Scott film from 1985, not to be confused with I think it was a Tom Hardy film more recently, also by the same name. But this is the 85 film. So I struggled to unlock this film at first, I will say, and sort of get into the groove of it because like every scene has this stuff floating around, whether it's flower petals or snow or bird feathers. This stuff constantly flowing around, and I couldn't help but think I'm getting some real knack vibes here, and just like the like how Knack constantly had these particle effects, sort of overcompensating. Oh, look at these cool technical things that we can show off. It did have a little bit of that, like just showing off for the sake of it, and it's a very strange film. Obviously, it's a fantasy adventure film, but like the characters will just flow from scene to scene with no real sense of progression or how they're getting there. There's no proper nouns like to name the kingdom or the races or anything. It's just here's some characters, they're off to stop the evil overlord, and that's about it. But there's a scene where the female lead is being basically corrupted, and there's this whole dance sequence. She's dancing with like this evil dress and like this sort of ballroom song playing, and as she's gradually corrupted, and that scene, I know it unlocked something in me. Just both the vibes they were going for, and I was just so completely captivated by the set decoration, the costumes, the music. It's all vibes basically, and that unlocked what the movie broadly is. It's very much like brain empty vibing out to this sort of dream sequence of flowing of events here.
So more of like a cocaine fueled spree,
Yes,
you might
yeah.
say.
I couldn't help but think of like Midsummer Night's Dream, which I mean, well, what I imagine that's like. I've not read it. My wife has, and agreed for what it's worth. That's, yeah. If you're willing to go in head empty and just appreciate the incredible set designs and just bonkers characters, there's some real wild voice acting in this film. The costume, like sorry, the goblin design is very reminiscent of like the Lord of the Rings. It feels like Lord of the Rings was pulling from this film. And obviously, then you get to the devil, Darkness himself, Tim Curry, in this incredible costume, which I'm sure everyone has seen, with the horns bigger than his head, which must have been like a day to get in and out of, I'm sure. But that was just breathtaking. I'll be honest. I really enjoyed that. And I like have had several friends, both male and female, say that whole scene of the female lead into sort of corruption and seduction by darkness awakening something in them. So yeah, and I guess Tom Cruise is in this film too, but you don't need to say any more about that. I really enjoyed this enough that I watched it twice, both the European version and the director's cut, because I mean this is a Ridley Scott film, so usually there is a director's cut that is arguably better. I didn't notice much difference between those two versions. I believe there's an American version which is worse generally thought of. So if you're going to watch it, check out one of either the European or the director's cut. I would recommend. And I mean, it really, if you think of like Ridley Scott, his first, I don't know if his first three films, but he did in order. He had Alien, Blade Runner, and Legend, and that is one hell of a hat trick, man, across like widely different genres and vibes, but three incredible films.
Yeah, the 80s were a wild time. Wonder how close that was to, what is it, Labyrinth? That is a wild movie.
This is an excellent companion to Labyrinth. This is also very dreamlike, head empty type film.
There's not a lot of sense or grounding to what happens. Just kind of go with it.
Yeah. Just hold on and go for the ride.
Very nice. All right. I think that was a satisfying meal of a bunch of different courses we had there. Maybe we should wrap it up there. Very cool. We're back on track with our latest season and new format. Okay. Very nice. All right. You want to tell the people how they can follow us?
Yeah, so if you have any questions or comments on today's games or any recommendations, games you'd like to see us discuss, you can contact us at omnigamersclub@gmail.com or at our website, omnigamers.club.
Right, and you can check us out on YouTube. We post our episodes there every time we put them out. Our earlier library was only in audio form, so go check those out in a podcatcher of your choosing if you're not already subscribed. And as I was recently corrected by my podcast partner, Daniel, apparently I've been giving out the wrong social media information this whole time. So I'm not OmniGamer Mark on Bluesky. I am that on Facebook and Instagram,
Hmm.
which I don't use anymore. I am Mark USA, MarkYuasa .bsky.social. So if you want to check me out, go there. And I've been posting more and more recently, so trying to keep more up to date. I posted a bunch of Japan photos. I
Ooh.
still have photos that I haven't finished posting, so I guess I'll have more of those to come.
And you can find me at Board Game Feast, also on Blue Sky, and the Omni Gamers Club account there as well.
Very good. All right. Well, with that said, until next time, I hope everyone out there, hope you have a balanced diet of gaming.
Bye.
Cheers.